Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm excited for my conversation today with Emily Paulsen. She has spent the last 14 years helping businesses build legacy brands, from big names including Abercrombie and Fitch, the Wendy's Company, to small businesses and startups. Her expertise includes strategist, brand manager, creative director, and UX designer. She now helps entrepreneurs build long-lasting brands deeply rooted in who you are, designed to attract the clients you want. Welcome to the show today, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to share your story. Your story starts off in Ohio. Is that right? You grew up in Ohio?
That's right. Ohio born and raised.
Awesome. I love it. Midwest girl. Talk about some of the early choices you made in regards to education. Where did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Ashland University, and I usually immediately follow that with it's a small school in Ohio, as people are usually kind of racking their brain. But I chose that. I was always really interested in business, I guess because my parents were business people, and of course, interested in fashion. I feel like I was of the time, watching MTV, just thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a career in fashion? Like a million other girls were all across the country. So I really liked that Ashland had a really renowned business program, but also offered fashion merchandising, which I thought would be my life path. So that's kind of what led me there, as an 18-year-old. That's why I made the choice.
Awesome. We have that a bit in common. I didn't do a degree in fashion merchandising, but I actually taught at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising here on the West Coast for about 11 years as an adjunct when I had a
Awesome.
marketing agency prior to launching Hera Hub. So I taught I taught marketing and entrepreneurship in the fashion merchandising program. So it was so much fun. I just absolutely loved it.
It is fun. I mean, it's fun too that even though neither of us technically work in fashion these days, you can still have it as a hobby, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it kind of stays with you for life. Got to get dressed in something every day. But no, it's fun. That's awesome to share that past together.
Yeah. And then you went into the fashion industry. It looks like you started off at J. Crew.
Yeah, I started at J. Crew. That was my first quote unquote real job, I guess, after college, and pretty quickly went to Abercrombie and Fitch, where I joined their brand Senses team, which is really it was sort of ahead of its time, I think. And anybody who's watched the Abercrombie documentary knows that there's a lot of pros and cons to that organization. But the idea of brand Senses was really all about having the brand appeal to all five senses. So that happens in the store, that happens on the website. They were really passionate about creating a sensory experience with the brand. So it was a great experience to kind of dive into that and start thinking about branding in that way, really early in my career.
That's awesome. Interesting. I want to underline that a little bit because with Hera Hub, that's a bit of it as well. We have running water and aromatherapy candles, and talk a bit more about that experience. What did they emphasize? And I want to watch this documentary now. I haven't watched it.
Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's an interesting watch for sure. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
I'm not a sponsor. I don't know why I'm like talking about it so much, but anyway, no, it's nostalgic for me to watch it after working there for years. Yeah, the idea of senses for the brand, which it's so cool that you create that with your experience at Hera Hub. And I think it's just sort of a piece that's often underrated in branding. And when I say the word brand, people often think of a logo or colors or just really kind of two-dimensional things. And really that can just leave a brand sort of feeling flat. And clients will bring examples to me and say like, oh, I love this brand, like I wish I was more like that. And it feels to them like there's some it factor that they can't quite capture or they can't quite replicate for their own brand. And often this idea of just thinking much more deeply about how your brand can appeal to people and how people can interact with your brand, thinking about all of those senses, how do they feel when they see it? Is there something they can touch? What kind of sound, what type of audio can you include in your branding or your content? Like all of those elements, that's what really creates that whole rich experience that takes a brand to the next level. And I just think that's not talked about that much. But it's a really critical piece to kind of making that lasting impression.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, you went from the world of fashion to the world of hamburgers next. How did that transition come about?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that both ways, right? Like, how do you go from like skinny jeans to French fries? But yeah, so my motivation at the time, even though working at Abercrombie was great for all the reasons I said, I had this amazing experience in the world of branding. But it's also a pretty non-traditional company in the way that they function. And at that time in my career, I just thought, I feel like I should get experience at a company that's more traditional in the world of brand and marketing and has um, I don't know, maybe more well-known systems and, they're using terms and things like media placement and commercials. Like Abercrombie didn't do any of that. So I really just wanted that different exposure. Both of those companies are also based in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I was living at the time. So I decided to go for it with Wendy's, and it was a pretty 180 reversal to the culture of Abercrombie. But in hindsight, I think it really helped kind of balance out my knowledge in the brand and marketing world because it was so different. And, where Abercrombie was targeting a much more niche audience, Wendy's fast food is for everyone, right? Like they serve moms and college kids and retired people. And so just kind of understanding how you can speak to your market, whether that market is really small and niche or whether it's really broad and diverse. It was a really nice experience for me to kind of have exposure and practice in that way.
Awesome. Yeah, Wendy's is such an interesting brand to me. And I see this in a lot of fast food, right? Like they've had to change their image over the years. Yeah,
Hmm.
whether it's various, scandals that happened around, food or the founder, or, it's just so interesting. So I do remember that time. It was probably quite some time ago when, Wendy's really went through a huge rebrand.
Hmm. Yeah, and it is cool to, see a legacy business like that that's been not only around for so long, but so well known for so long. Like, how do you deal with those pivots and how do you modernize and keep things feeling up to date without scrapping all the pieces that people recognize you for? So that can be a real like push pull as you're making those choices, and it's really interesting to be part of those transitions.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I, yeah, it's just with so many brands, and we have seen that, right? Where, the company changes the brand too much. And then, like you said, there's like a push pull with the consumer of like, wait, no, this is what I
Hmm.
know and love. But keeping
Hmm.
things up to date at the same time, I can imagine how tricky that is. And then
Hmm.
you came into the world of hospitality.
Hmm. Yeah, so another sort of 180. I'm not great at math, so you can see how
From
we've already
skinny
spun.
jeans to French fries to martinis. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much exactly. I'm just developing all of my interests over time, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I started working for a small kind of boutique hospitality company in Chicago, which is where I'm still located. And, that was kind of at that point, I was interested in the shift. Like now I'd kind of done the traditional big scale marketing for an international legacy brand. And I kind of wanted to try the startup world and see what it was like to work for a really small business that had to be really scrappy, but was really, really in touch with their consumer because, you just don't have all those layers that you end up with at a huge corporation. So that's what kind of prompted the search to find a job in that realm. And yeah, it's an amazing hospitality company here in Chicago that owns different restaurants, all different types of restaurants at different levels. So really the key learning for me there was just, again, to be down at that small business level and understanding, the challenges there's so much that you want to accomplish, but when you don't have Wendy's budgets or Abercrombie budgets, you really have to prioritize like what is going to be the marketing effort, the branding effort that really moves the needle and makes the biggest impact and has the biggest return on our investment, because you don't have the bandwidth to try a ton of different things, and then be happy when one of those works out. You have to be so much more strategic from the start, which was a new challenge that was really challenging, but also, insightful, just to get that level of clarity on what you're doing and really be clear about the purpose of every effort.
Yeah, fun to be able to build something as opposed to taking something that was, has had such legacy, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt like, sometimes I would get in my head after a martini and be like, am I even like, it's hard to gauge, when you're at a big company, there are so many people like Wendy's, there's so many people working to make that brand successful. So it's hard to know, like, what are your talents contributing sometimes when you're in that corporate mix. I think it can feel a little like, you're a small fish in a big pond, and like, will they even miss me, right, if I left? So to have that feeling of a greater impact was really beneficial to me. It's something I was really craving to kind of prove to myself that, no, like I can do this on my own. If I am the marketing department,
Yeah,
to, just prove to myself that I could do it.
that's awesome. And what did the hospitality group do exactly?
So they owned restaurant
Okay.
companies.
Okay.
So, yep.
Great.
So yeah, several different
Sometimes
restaurants.
hospitality can stretch into hotels, so it
Oh,
wasn't
for sure.
yeah. Awesome. That's great. What type of restaurants?
We had a couple different options. So one is like a fast casual, healthy eatery called Life Kitchen. Had some original concept restaurants that were open throughout the city that were more fine dining, casual sit down. So it was a big variety. And the fun in that was creating lots of different brands from scratch. It's
Mm.
like a whole new concept, and you could do everything from the name to the menu, like all of those tiny details back to the five senses, right? Thinking about how people experience a restaurant in the 3D and how they're going to interact with that brand, not just taste, but every other element that happens when you're in a restaurant and you're within the experience of going out to eat. So it sort of brought things full circle and was fun to kind of birth things into the world as brand new brands.
Awesome. So you were at L3 Hospitality Group for quite some time, almost 7 years.
Hmm.
What was the decision to go out on your own? Talk us through that.
Yeah. Well, COVID happened, and and
I'm like, say no
luckily,
more. No, I'm
I
just
know, right? Everyone's like, oh yeah, duh.
kidding.
Yeah. So, and luckily I was able to keep my position, but another one of those moments where you kind of think like, you have time to slow down, and most of us don't do that when we're just in our normal day-to-day jobs. I'm sure I'm just saying things that all of your listeners know, but just having more time, there was just less to do, right? Like our restaurants were closed. I wasn't that busy. So having time to think about like, if everything did go back to normal, if everything went back to exactly how it was, like, is that my dream life? Am I
Mm,
working at my dream job? Is there, something more that I am really craving? And, I have a couple friends who own their own businesses, and I was really scared at first. Like, we would have conversations and I would just kind of, you know, voice, like ramble all the stuff that I wanted out of my life and my career. And they would say, well, it really sounds like you want to start your own business. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like you misheard me. That sounds so hard. I can't do that. Like I love, working with a team, and I'm competitive, and frankly, I'm driven by impressing my boss and getting like praise. Like, who would do that for me if I was all by myself? In hindsight, it feels silly because you realize you work way harder for yourself than you would for anyone else. But anyway, it was a scary proposition. But I just kind of started testing the waters. Like I would put together, okay, well, if I was going to do this, what could I even sell? Like, what would I even offer? Okay, well, if I was going to offer that, like, what type of clients would I want? And just kind of building out slowly. Like I never did a formal business plan or anything like that, but just kind of building out slowly like what this could look like. And then that became so exciting that I felt like I couldn't not try. Like
Mhm.
even, who knows if all of my fears would be true and I would have to like scrap the whole thing. But yeah, I just felt, I don't know, working on those pieces, which I was doing by myself for myself, like nobody even knew what I was doing. But that was like the most fulfilling part of my day. And it just seemed like that was something that, I shouldn't ignore.
Absolutely. So the first day day after you left your job and started
Hmm.
your business, what was that feeling like?
I had honestly, I had a lot of momentum at the
Okay,
beginning.
good.
So it felt fine at first. Honestly, I remember, which this sounds like, I mean, I can't believe I thought this or said this, but I remember like going out with some friends, maybe like 3 weeks in, and I had like one connection who signed on to be a client right away, and which ended up falling through, by the way. But at this time, like 3 weeks in, I was like, I don't think this is going to be that hard. Like, I feel like, I mean, honestly, you guys, like, it's going pretty great. Like, I just got this client and I have my website now. And, it's like, I don't know what, which good for me, good for younger
Yes.
Emily who, who thought it would maintain that way. Because it certainly didn't. So, yeah, for me, the very beginning was like all fun and excitement. And then probably, 9 months in, I started to be like, oh gosh, because now it feels like I have some distance from that past job. Like I'm really out here, this is really like my full time thing. And I was kind of changing what I wanted to offer. So some of those original like contacts didn't really make sense anymore. Like I wasn't really going to do the types of services that they would even want. So now I felt like, whoa, I'm like really starting from scratch here. Yeah. And it was pretty scary for sure.
Absolutely. And you started off with a co-founder.
Yes, yeah. So I started off with a co-founder, which was great. It was a great experience. I think so I knew her from my job in hospitality, and we have always complemented each other incredibly well, worked together really well. And I think it was a good catalyst for me to have another person. Like, if there was a moment where I was like, I don't know if this is a bad idea, like maybe I should just apply for another corporate job, or just like stick with what I know. It's like there was one other person, even if they also kind of had those same worries,
Yeah.
you kind of had committed to each other that you were going to at least give it a shot. So in those very early days where you're very wiggly about whether or not you should even keep going or just like work on your resume, it was helpful to have another person who was at least as committed as I was to kind of getting this thing off the ground. And then ultimately, she just decided relatively quickly that she wanted to go in a different direction. And she is also a real estate investor, and things were going really well. So she was like, I'm going to do this. And, I'm like, I don't blame you. Yeah. So we kind of split ways, but in a really positive way. And I think in hindsight, that whole relationship just really served its purpose again for getting things off the ground and kind of giving us both the confidence to do what we really want. But it just turned out that what we really want was two separate things.
Yeah, no, totally. I hear this story again and again. And when people come to me and like, ask about, I want a partner, this is my friend, like
Mm,
think about it. Let's really look at this because it's not easy. It really isn't. Um,
yeah.
yeah, people go in different directions. That's just part of life and it's okay.
Yeah, it's a great thing,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, and I feel very grateful that we, again, still have a great relationship and everything kind of worked out. We were both kind of feeling the same things at the same times. And I know it doesn't go that way for everybody. But yeah, I think it's a tricky thing to navigate. But yeah, I think when people can admit, even if they have gone down the path of co-founding or having multiple founders or, starting this idea, I think I really commend people who can be honest with themselves and with their partner and just say, like, now that we're into this, I'm really feeling like it's not a fit, or I have a new idea or whatever. I think, it can be like a really nice catalyst to getting you where you want to go, as long as you can be self-aware and true to yourself and kind of expressing what you learned from the process of starting a business with someone.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's get into your business, Electric Collab. What type of services do you offer, Emily? And give us some examples of some of the types of clients or projects you worked on.
Yeah. So I'm rebuilding my website now, and I recently kind of changed my tagline to revolutionary small business branding. And I
I
felt,
love
you
it. I
know,
love it.
thank you, thank you. Worked through all the, feelings of like revolutionary. Who does she think she is? But my whole reason for that, really the crux of the service we provide is really comprehensive branding for small businesses and online entrepreneurs. So I have felt, through all the roles, through all the stuff we've talked about, it just seems like there has always been this gap in branding where you either pay somebody $100,000 and they really do a comprehensive brand, like everything from your fonts and typography to your UX design on your website, your copywriting, like all of it. Or if you don't have $100,000, like no small business does,
Mhm.
then you kind of piecemeal things together over time. Like you might find somebody who can do your logo pretty inexpensively, and then like maybe you kind of build your website yourself. And it's a great place to start, and I think that's where you need to start in the extremely early days. But it just felt like there was nobody who was offering a comprehensive, like holistic view of all of it, who could really help you with your tone of voice, your personality, your brand values, all the way through like the colors on your website and your copywriting. So that's the gap that we aim to fill. And as far as clients, I mean, let's see, it's been quite a few industries. I have a client right now who's a wedding planner, worked with people in the coaching space, academic and career coaches, a Reiki master. I have a personal trainer who I'm helping this year, ice cream shop. I don't do product based anymore, but
Mm.
that brand was like way too fun to pass up. It's called Pretty Cool Ice Cream, and it's just the coolest. So, an ice cream shop last year, energy healing, really anybody who provides a service and just feels like, you're ready to take your brand to the next level and have your brand really reflect the caliber of your work. That is our sweet spot. Those are the people I can really help the most.
Fantastic. And what are some of the things that you're working on? I know you said you're relaunching your website, but what are some of the other things that you're looking forward to in your business this upcoming year?
Yeah. So the brand side, everything I mentioned is really like the heart of our business, but it's done for you client work. So once I have a client in that space, I go really deep. I say that I'm like getting into your mind, to craft this brand that's really reflective of who you are and the people you want to attract. So in addition to that, I'm, brainstorming a way that I can help multiple people at once. Just since my brand time is limited, there's a definite capacity on how many minds I can be in at a time. So I'm looking for a way to help people kind of with the next step once your brand is done. So once you feel really confident and you have this beautiful brand that really reflects everything about your business that you want it to, going out and marketing that. And I've really been drawn to this idea of ethical marketing. I feel like it's pretty new. I'm sure it'll be a buzzword in the, within like 5 minutes. But it just seems like so much in marketing for entrepreneurs, like there's all this talk about like, yeah, we know it's uncomfortable to sell, but just like get over that uncomfortableness. Or yeah, we know it feels weird to like pitch your products in a webinar, but just like practice and you'll get used to it. Like we're not addressing the fact that like maybe these just aren't the best tactics, right? And they're, instead of just getting used to something that doesn't feel right with us, maybe there's another way. So I'm kind of working on this program all about ethical marketing. Not that those things are necessarily unethical, but it's more about being aligned with your own ethics and, just how you feel your best showing up and sharing with your audience. So that's something that I'm working on, still kind of refining what the heck that means, but I just feel really drawn to that idea for the future.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, we talk a lot about that at Hera Hub when folks go out on their own, especially if they don't have any sales background experience. Maybe they're an attorney or an
Hmm.
executive coach or a CPA, and this idea of selling is just so foreign to them. So that's really great that you're addressing that for entrepreneurs.
Thank you. really
Awesome.
validating to hear. So
Yes,
thanks.
yes, of course, absolutely. Well, Emily, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, reach out to you, learn more about you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So my website is electriccollab.com. Collab is COLLAB. And you can also find me, you can email me at emily@electriccollab.com, or I'm on Instagram at Hey Emily Paulsen. So any of those places, I'm there every single day. I'd love to hear from anybody.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Emily.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.